Ahousaht First Nation released the findings from the first phase of its search for missing children who attended to residential schools in its territory on Wednesday in Ahousaht, BC. In a press conference in the community, the team went over the ground surveys it conducted, as well as archival research and oral history from both the Ahousaht Indian Residential School on Maaqutusiis, Flores Island, and the Christie Indian Residential School on Hilth, Meares Island, located near Ahousaht territory, about 220 kilometers northwest of Victoria. Likely and potential unmarked grave locations were noted on both the Ahousaht Indian Residential School and the Christie Indian Residential School. "We need to investigate more and clarify and confirm," said Angus Campbell, an elected council member for Ahousaht First Nation. "We don't want Äaah not telling the truth." The presentation said there are presumed graves in Ahousaht Cemetery and a cluster of unknown features that need to be investigated further. The findings also showed many inconsistencies between archival documentation of the schools and the gathered oral histories. "Wednesday was an emotional day," said Greg Louis, former chief of Ahousaht and a survivor of the Christie Residential School. "A lot of people wanted to know numbers. I think going into the next phase," said Louis. "Was it my sister? Was it my mom? Who didn't make it home?" Students from Ahousaht Residential School and Christie Residential School reported stories of slugs in the milk, worms in oatmeal, and maggots in the food, which was contrary to archival reports of menus served at the schools. "We're getting close to confirming some of what we've been told," said Campbell. "Not that we don't believe our people, but we need to confirm it for the rest of the world." The National Center for Truth and Reconciliation Äaah website said it was Presbyterian-run until the United Church took over in 1925. The website said students were not permitted to speak their indigenous language, and every staff member carried a strap. The Äaah lists the names of 13 students known to have died there. The residential school burned down in 1940 and was replaced with a day school. Christie Indian Residential School, on Hilth, Meares Island, Penedon 1900. The Äaah website said 6 children died of tubercular meningitis between 1939 and 1941, and over several years in the 1950s a school maintenance worker sexually abused a student. The Äaah lists the names of 23 students known to have died there. After 1969, the school was administered by the federal government. In 1971, the school closed and students were moved to the Christie Student Residence in Tofino, BC, which was transferred to the West Coast District Council of Indian Chiefs in the mid-70s and closed in 1983. The project has created 471 student folders of documentation of students who attend the Christie Residential School, but there has been less documentation on the students who went to the Ahousaht Residential School. After 1969, the school was administered by the federal government. In 1971, the school closed and students were moved to the Christie Student Residence in Tofino, BC, which was transferred to the West Coast District Council of Indian Chiefs in the mid-70s and closed in 1983. The project has created 471 student folders of documentation of students who attend the Christie Residential School, but there has been less documentation on the students who went to the Ahousaht Residential School.